The civil services exam is one of the most competitive exams in the country. Given the fact that general studies is compulsory and there is by and large a level playing field, your optional subject is potentially a sheet anchor in this examination. With 500 marks up for grabs, optional subject indeed plays a vital role in your final rank. A high score in the optional papers will significantly boost your chances of faring well in the merit list. In this video, I will share with you some important tips to target 280 plus in anthropology paper. In addition to the efforts you put in your preparation, it is equally important to understand the way answers are written in this exam. After all your hard work boils down to the day when you need to demonstrate your capabilities to the examiner. And how shall you do that? There's only one way, and that is through high quality content and presentation. While the quality of the content depends on the resources you have accessed and your level of preparation, the quality of your answers is something you can easily improve. Here are some tips I would like to share with you. First and foremost, remember, there is no single perfect way of writing an answer. And there are many ways to write a good answer, just like there are many different recipes for a good meal. Remember that your answer must prove itself on three criteria. One, clarity of thought, which comes with conceptual clarity, your level of preparation, and the quality of the sources you have referred. Number two, range of application. How holistic is your treatment of the question, which once again depends on your preparation. Remember, anthropology is a holistic, comparative, and historical science, and this paradigm should be reflected in your answers too, should the questions demand. Number three is power of expression. This is your ability to communicate in simple, lucid, and clear language. So much so that when a novice reads through your answer, it should make sense to him or her. Achieving simplicity does not just entail a command in the language, but also on the subject, quality of your preparation, and your ability to express your thoughts. Now let's move on to some specifics. Number one, don't rush to answer the question the moment you read it. Take your time to identify the key words in the question. What topic is this question concerning? Underline what is it that you're required to do. Are we required to explain? Should we compare and contrast? Or are you asked to critically comment on a topic or a debate? What instructions are in the question? This is important to address the core demand and also identify the domain to which the question belongs to. The chapter, the topic, or the context of the question has to be understood even before you attempt to start writing the answer. Number two, decide upon the structure and the main points. This exercise can take anywhere from half a minute to two. Use the rough space if required. As a result, you are better able to anticipate how much time you will need to devote to answering the question. You will gain more marks based on how effectively and how organized and how clearly the answer is communicated. You will need to plan your answer in a structured way so that it is understandable. Number three, divide your answer into three parts: introduction, body, and conclusion. While this may not be necessary for short notes, since there is a word limit, it is a good practice to present your points in this organized way. Number four, write your introduction. You can provide a brief overview of the primary theme or the topic, like a definition, and outline the aspects of the issue that you are going to cover in the main body of the answer. You should use introduction as a gateway to your main body of the answer. And no, you don't have to quote every scientist verbatim, and you can paraphrase them. Number five, organize your main body of answer into neat subheadings. You can present your answer in bullet points, but make sure that all the sentences are self-explanatory and not too short or abrupt. Number six, make sure you enrich your answer wherever applicable, with ethnographic examples or case studies, if any. Without them, your answers will remain generic and need not be through an anthropological lens. However, a word of caution. There is a tendency that I see in aspirants trying to fill the answer with examples without actually defining or discussing the context for the concept in which the question is asked. Examples should only complement the points you mention, and they should not be used ever to supplement the content itself. Due attention should be paid to this fact. The core demand should be your primary concern, and examples can be used only to support your points and not replace them. Number 7, mentioning relevant anthropological works, names of the scholars, and their views is important. This is especially so when we are dealing with theoretical concepts and methods in both paper 1 and paper 2. Number 8, do not make mistakes in factual data. Avoid mentioning them if you're not sure, but do not quote wrong data. Remember, it's always better to be vaguely correct than precisely wrong when it comes to factual information. Number 9, the answer's conclusion ought to be rationally deduced from both the introduction and the main body of the response. Again, it is not necessary in short notes as there is a word limit. Do not artificially or deliberately conclude as a habit. Do it only when it is relevant and required. In other words, conclusions should be logical and contextual. Let's examine some topics. A question on tribal problems, for example. Start with the definition of the problem, like land alienation. What does it mean? Move on to the statistics, if any, like how much tribal land has been alienated or how much percentage of tribal population is affected by it. The impact of the problem, like what are the consequences of land alienation, in what way it affects the tribal life. Factors responsible, like causes of land alienation, and the types like individual or institutional land alienation, while giving suitable examples. And conclude your answer with suggestions and recommendations to curtail the problem. Or assume if it's a question on the conceptual debate between substantivism and formalism. Your introduction would be to define what the context of the debate is. Like, can the modern economic theory, whose principles are based on the study of modern capitalist nations, where profit is a motive, applicable to the study of primitive economies? So, the debate between substantivism and formalism is around answering this question. And then move on to explaining the propositions of both the parties, that is, formalists and substantivists. And what would be the conclusion? Ideally, it should be the critique of the debate. Like you can add Stephen Goodman's postmodern, polyvocal, culturally relativistic approach or culturalism to economic anthropology as an alternative to formalism and substantivism. Adding contemporary relevance of the debates, concepts, issues would add value to your answer. In the context of substantivism and formalism, for example, you can add the relevance of this debate in contemporary era of globalization. Let's take another question, like a fossil evidence in paleoanthropology. An ideal introduction would be the timeline, the ecological background, and the discovery of the fossil. And the main body would be the general characteristics, both biological and cultural, if any, with some illustrations if possible. And the conclusion would always be a phylogenetic status or implications debate of the fossil discovery. And you can also conclude by talking about what this fossil has subsequently evolved into and the significance of this fossil find in anthropology. In a question on any anthropological theory, like say functionalism, an ideal introduction would be the impetus to the theory. The main body would be the basic postulates and critique. If there are different versions or adaptations of the theory, like cultural functionalism or structural functionalism, you need to briefly mention them as well. And if the question is asking about a specific version of a theory, do not forget to mention the alternative versions too. Just make a passing reference before conclusion. And an ideal conclusion to any theory would be how it influenced or impacted or inspired the discipline and the method of anthropology. If it's a question on the concept like great traditions or little traditions, tribe caste continuum, or nature man spirit complex, etc., an ideal introduction would be the background or the context in which the concept is proposed and by whom. The main body would be the propositions or the postulates of the scholar and critique, if any. You can conclude these types of answers by mentioning the practical implications or application of the concept and any contemporary relevance. These are just some ideas. You need to, however, calibrate the content based on the question asked. Where possible, you can use illustrations to support your content, like flowcharts, stick or line diagrams, tables, or charts. This is especially useful in physical anthropology or those kind of questions where describing a process or a chronology is required, like in archaeology. Your illustrations or diagrams need not be artistic, but should convey the meaning of what you have written in a textual format. Again, a word of caution. Illustrations are only to support what you write and by themselves should not be the core content of your answer. If it is a compare and a contrast type of a question, make a table only if clear distinctions can be made. It is not advisable to take this route if there are no discrete points of difference. You would rather explain them in sentences. Tables usually curtail your ability to elaborate on a point when it is important. Remember to underline keywords, names of ethnographers or the anthropologists. Write legibly and do not strike off too many times. Effectively use the space that is allocated and take due precautions to avoid any penal deduction of marks. Finally, attempt all the questions. There may be one or two instances where you have no choice but to answer. I would advise you to write whatever little you can remember, but do not totally avoid them. I would advise all aspirants, especially the first timers, to thoroughly go through the PYQs to understand the nature and the quality of questions asked in every chapter. This will not only help you in your preparation, but also understand the expectations, benchmarks, or standards of the examination. Last but not the least, do not stress, remain calm, and go with a free mind. Your memory will serve you best when you are not anxious and when you are stress free. I hope you found these inputs useful and I wish you all the very best. Take care and God bless you.